Well, how is your afternoon so far? Yeah, nobody could sleep through that, I can assure you. Well, I wanted to come back and introduce our next speaker because he is a longtime friend of mine. In fact, we were elected at the same time back in our home state of Louisiana in 1996. And we served together for almost a decade, and I came to Washington a little ahead of him to make way for him. But he's actually gotten a little further ahead of me. He has been serving as the majority whip since 2014. Prior to that, he was the chairman of the Republican Study Committee. But before all of that, I knew him when we were freshmen in Louisiana in a wave of reform that was elected to take on a state that had been consumed with gambling, high taxes, and anti-business policies. We reached a high watermark when he and I were elected. Out of 144 legislators, I think we had 28 Republicans. And so we know what it's like to fight. He knows what it's like to fight, but he's also one who knows how to win people over. And it's been amazing to watch his career here in Washington, D.C., as he has worked with the Republican conference and, as I said, was elected to head up the study committee and now as the majority whip. And America now knows him for his heroic effort to never give up. And when I was actually supposed to have met with him and had lunch with him the day that he was shot as they were playing, the Republicans were practicing their ball game, for the ball game. And I remember getting the text in a meeting early that morning that he had been shot. And of course, the whole nation was watching. As you know, you wonder, how can we come to a point in our nation where there are those that are so filled with hate that they will want to kill those who simply have an ideological difference? But I think Steve Scalise has helped win the hearts of Americans on both sides of the aisle, as he has made very clear. He will never give up. He will continue to fight for the things that he believes in, the things that you and I believe in. He is a great friend of value voters. He's a great friend of the Family Research Council, and he's a dear friend of mine. Please welcome the Majority Whip, Congressman Steve Scalise.
Thank you so much. Wow. God bless America. Thank you. Thank you. Wow. How heartwarming is that? Thank you so much. Thank you, my great friend Tony Perkins, not only for that great introduction, but for your leadership on the national stage to stand up for the values that made this country so great. So thank Tony Perkins for the work he does every day as the head of the Family Research Council. When I look out at this crowd and just feel that energy that you just gave me, let me thank all of you for the prayers. You know, my family had a tough time for the last few months, but it really was such an overwhelming experience that we directly received from people all across this country, people like you that just care about the greatness of America, and you saw what happened, and whether you knew me or not, you knew that this was an attack on the values of our country, and you reached out in prayer. And I want to share with you a little bit about what I reached out to call upon our God to do. We have a great and mighty God, and I am a living example of the miracles that he can produce. Right after I was shot, I fall down and I just start crawling away from the gunfire. And once my arms gave out and I couldn't crawl anymore, I laid there, and the first thing I said is, I'm just going to pray. And I prayed to God. I prayed to him for a lot of very specific things because I knew at that point there was nothing else I can do. And I've always had a deep faith, but of course, a time like this, you really are calling on God in a more important way, where you're really asking him to do some things that are pretty mighty. And I first thought about my daughter. I've got a 10-year-old daughter, and I said, God, please don't let my daughter walk up the aisle alone. It's just the first thing that came to my mind. Then I prayed that I could see my family again, my lovely wife, Jennifer, and our 2 kids. And then I heard other gunfire. The Capitol Police Security Detail that are commissioned to protect me started engaging with the shooter. I prayed that they were successful in carrying out their duty. And in such an heroic way, while being shot themselves, they did. They carried out that duty, and they saved my life. They saved the life of everybody else there. And what it did for me is it showed me the calmness that God can give you in the most trying times. I mean, imagine being shot by a gunman who had come with, pretty heavy artillery to do great damage to all of us. And after being hit, when I was there praying to God, I had a calmness and an ease about me because I knew it was in God's hands. And it was such a powerful thing. And then after that, when I was in the hospital, to see the overwhelming support and prayers that were coming from all around the country and all around the world, it was so overwhelming. And let me tell you, it lifted me up. It gave me strength. I cannot thank you enough for those prayers. It's the reason I'm here today. So thank you for that love and that compassion. I want to share a little bit for a few minutes about one of the things I really hungered for when I was in that hospital for 3.5 months. And, the first month you're fighting for your life. The second month you're trying to figure out how you can get back to the way you were before as much or close you can. And then about that third month, I started getting stir crazy and saying, how can I get out of here? And I really longed to go back home. I love South Louisiana. We've got some of the greatest food in the world. And I started thinking about my favorite restaurants and getting home, going into my own house and seeing my kids there. They had come up and spent a lot of the summer with me through my healing process. But I also thought about getting back to work. I love doing the job that I have as an elected representative in Congress for Southeast Louisiana and as the House Majority Whip, and in a position where I can fight to influence the policies of this country in a better direction. And I really hungered to get back to work, and ultimately I was able to. And let me tell you how important some of the work we're doing is. The first week that I was back, we passed the Pain Capable bill, the bill by my good friend Trent Franks, that stops abortions after 20 weeks when we know the baby can feel pain. It was a very strong vote. It's a very important piece of legislation. Again, scientific data shows that the baby can feel pain after 20 weeks. This is a bill that's over in the Senate now. Let's encourage our senators to take this bill up, to vote on it, and hopefully to pass that bill, because Donald Trump, as President of the United States, says he wants to sign that bill into law. I was real excited to hear that President Trump came and addressed this group this morning, and what a great president Donald Trump is for this country when you think of what he's doing right now. Just to tell you the kind of person he is, within a day of when I was shot, President Trump and Melania went to the hospital. I was still going through surgeries, and I was unaware of what was going on then, but my wife Jennifer was there, and they consoled and gave her some real comforting in a really tough time. And then the president continued to call me from the hospital time in and time out to check on me just to see how I was doing. And, I've enjoyed working with this president on a number of issues. I worked real closely with Tony Perkins when we were putting together our repeal and replace bill of Obamacare to make sure that included in that bill was a complete defunding of Planned Parenthood, to make sure no taxpayer dollars go to fund abortion. And let me tell you, that fight is not over. We passed that bill in the House by a very thin majority. As the majority whip, I had to put that coalition together. And you're talking about threading a needle inside of a needle. It was very tough to do when you talk about some of our most conservative members that had some really important issues they wanted to address, and even some of our more moderate members that had their own concerns, and we had to put them all together. But we did. And then you look at the Senate, and they came within one vote, which means they cannot give up. They've got to keep fighting, keep working until they get that vote and pass that bill and ultimately get that onto President Trump's desk so he can sign it. Talking about God, this got no attention, believe it or not, but a few months ago, one of my colleagues who doesn't believe that we should open up the house in prayer every day, which, by the way, we do. We have a chaplain. We open up the house in prayer every single day, right under that moniker, One Nation Under God. In God we trust. In God we trust is right there on the moniker. And yet he said that we shouldn't have to pray, and it went to federal court. And just Wednesday of this week, we got a ruling from the federal court that says, yes, indeed, we can open up the House chamber in prayer every day. Great victory. A great victory. In talking about President Trump, just imagine if that case went to the Supreme Court and Hillary Clinton was president, whoever she would have appointed, the 5-4 decision that would have come out that might have reversed that decision. But now, because of President Trump, we have Neil Gorsuch on the Supreme Court replacing Antonin Scalia to help ensure that we've got a court that will actually interpret the Constitution the way that it was written. Not the way that you think or I think, but the way it was actually written by our founding fathers and the amendments that came forward afterwards. So we're going to continue working with President Trump. Right now I'm working very closely with him on tax reform. And let me tell you how important tax reform is to families across America. First of all, the fact that we're going to lower every rate. We're going to lower rates for families. We're going to lower rates, the highest corporate rate in the world that is killing jobs in America. Let's bring those jobs back to America. How about if we repeal the death tax completely? Double the child tax credit. And what if, in our bill, by the way, this is one of the components of our bill, we simplify the tax code in a way that over 90% of all Americans can actually fill out their taxes on a postcard. Or for young people, you can fill it out on your smartphone. That's what tax reform is all about. Those are the things that we're working on. Let me tell you, it is such a great time in this country when you look at the opportunities we have. You can focus on the things that haven't been done. But let me tell you, when I came back with an even sharper focus. I know what's important in life. I always love my family. But I know now that you've got to sharpen even more on the things that are important to your life, your family, your friends, and the things that you love doing. And I've got a passion, a burning passion, to help fight for the greatness of America. We stand for the national anthem because we know what that means. But ultimately, the things that we are frustrated with, that we want government to do that it hasn't done, the things that President Trump wants on his desk that haven't gotten onto his desk, let's not give up that fight, whether it's repealing and replacing Obamacare, defunding Planned Parenthood, moving forward on the Johnson Amendment, which I'm very happy to be working with Tony Perkins on to make sure that people of religious faith cannot continue to be intimidated by the IRS to suppress their political views. We got to stop that policy. President Trump wants that bill on his desk. Let's fight to get it on his desk. This is a great time to be in America. This is a great time to be in the fight. And what all of you do as values voters, as you fight to make sure that these critical issues that are important to the values of our country are front and center in this great national debate. It's great to be here. It's great to be alive. It's great to be with all of you. God bless you, and God bless America. Thank you.